Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you enjoy movies that take a simple survival story and turn it into something completely unexpected, then you're definitely going to want to hear about The Last House. Because this isn't your typical invasion thriller. Imagine being trapped inside your own home, while the world outside becomes increasingly dangerous. You have limited food, limited resources, no normal way of living. And the only people you can depend on are the members of your own family. Sounds simple, right? Well, The Last House takes that idea and pushes it into some seriously strange territory. The movie mixes science fiction, survival thriller, family drama, and dark comedy into one bizarre package. And somehow, underneath all the chaos, there's actually a surprisingly simple message about family, responsibility, and appreciating the things we normally take for granted. So today, we're breaking down The Last House. We'll talk about the story, the performances, the survival elements, the strange tone, what works, what doesn't, and ultimately whether this movie is worth your time. So, let's get into it. The story. At the center of The Last House is a family facing a world that has changed dramatically. Something has happened outside, the normal systems of society are no longer reliable, and the safest option appears to be staying inside their home. But there's a problem. A house can protect you from the outside world, but it can't magically provide everything you need to survive. Food starts becoming an issue. Water becomes important. Resources become limited. And every day inside the house creates another challenge. The family slowly realizes that surviving isn't going to be as easy as simply locking the doors and waiting for everything to go back to normal. Because what if normal never comes back? That's where the movie starts getting interesting. When home becomes a prison. We normally think of home as the safest place we have. It's where we sleep. It's where we eat. It's where we feel comfortable. But The Last House completely changes that idea. The house becomes both a sanctuary and a prison. The walls protect the family from what's outside, but those same walls also keep them trapped. And the longer they stay inside, the more complicated everything becomes. Suddenly, basic things that we usually ignore become extremely valuable. Fresh food, clean water, working plumbing, electricity, fresh air, things we rarely think about become part of the survival equation, and that's one of the movie's more interesting ideas. It makes ordinary life feel like a luxury. The family. At the heart of the movie is the family itself. And this is where The Last House becomes more than just another survival thriller. Because surviving a disaster isn't only about physical strength, it's about cooperation, trust, communication, and sometimes sacrifice. The family members don't always agree, they don't always make the right decisions, and they certainly don't handle the situation in exactly the same way. But they're forced to work together because they don't have many other options. That's what creates a lot of the movie's tension. The audience isn't just wondering what will happen outside. We're also wondering what will happen inside the house. Will the family stay united? Will fear tear them apart? And how far will each person go to protect the others? Greta Lee. Greta Lee leads the movie with a performance that feels relatively grounded despite the increasingly bizarre circumstances around her. She's an actor who can communicate a lot through subtle reactions, and that works well here. Her character isn't presented as some unstoppable action hero. Instead, she's dealing with uncertainty, fear, responsibility, and the pressure of keeping her family alive. And that's important. Because the world around her can become completely unbelievable, but her emotional reactions help keep the story connected to something recognizable. She's essentially trying to maintain some sense of normal life while everything around her is falling apart. Wagner Moura. Then we have Wagner Moura. Many viewers will recognize him from Narcos, but here he's operating in a very different kind of story. His character is dealing with the same impossible situation, but there's also a strong sense of responsibility. He's trying to understand what's happening while protecting the people closest to him. And one interesting aspect of the performance is that he doesn't always seem completely comfortable with the absurdity of the situation, but honestly, that can actually work, because the audience may be feeling exactly the same thing. We're watching this strange situation unfold and thinking, okay, what exactly is going on here? That uncertainty becomes part of the movie's charm. The science fiction side. Now let's talk about the science fiction element. Because The Last House isn't simply a family hiding inside a house. there's a much larger threat surrounding them. The outside world has changed, and the family has to figure out what happened while trying to survive the consequences. The movie doesn't simply rely on explosions and giant action sequences. Instead, much of the tension comes from uncertainty. What is happening outside? How dangerous is it? Can the family trust what they know? And is staying inside actually safer than going outside? These questions keep the story moving. The survival thriller. This is where the movie becomes particularly interesting, because survival isn't always about fighting monsters or running from explosions. Sometimes survival is about managing resources. How much food do you have? How much water remains? What happens when something breaks? What happens when you can't replace it? And what happens when the people inside the house start making different decisions about how to survive? The movie takes those everyday problems and puts them into an extreme situation. That's what gives the story its tension. The dark comedy. But here's where The Last House becomes really unusual. It isn't completely serious. There are moments where the movie embraces the absurdity of its own premise. Some situations are disturbing, some are uncomfortable, and some are genuinely funny because they're so ridiculous. That creates a strange tonal combination. You might be watching a serious survival sequence one moment, and then suddenly, the movie throws something completely unexpected at you. For some viewers, that's going to be one of the movie's biggest strengths. For others, it could be the biggest problem. Because the movie doesn't always stay in one emotional lane. It moves between tension, drama, absurdity, and dark humor. The strangest part of the movie. One of the reasons The Last House could become a cult favorite is because it doesn't feel completely conventional. It's not trying to be just another serious apocalypse movie. It has an intentionally weird personality. The situation is extreme. The survival methods can become unusual. And the movie occasionally seems to step back and say, what if we made this even stranger? That won't appeal to everyone. But if you're the kind of viewer who enjoys movies that take risks and don't follow the standard formula, that weirdness can be refreshing. What the movie is really about. Underneath all the science fiction and survival chaos, the movie is really about family. Think about how much of modern life we take for granted. We can order food, turn on a tap, open the refrigerator, go outside, call someone, drive somewhere. We don't usually think about how dependent we are on all of these systems, but take them away, and suddenly everything changes. The Last House puts a family into exactly that kind of situation, and it forces them to reconsider what's actually important. Not luxury, not entertainment, not convenience, just survival, connection, and the people around you. What works? There are several things I think work particularly well. First, the basic concept. A family trapped inside a house is simple, but it gives the filmmakers a lot of opportunities to create tension. Second, the combination of genres. Science fiction, survival thriller, family drama, and dark comedy aren't an obvious combination, but that unusual mixture gives the movie its own identity. Third, the performances. Greta and Wagner Moura bring enough dramatic weight to make the family situation feel important. And finally, the movie isn't afraid to be weird. That's a big advantage. In a world full of movies that can sometimes feel very similar, a strange concept can actually make a film stand out. What doesn't work? But let's talk about the weaknesses. The biggest issue is probably the tone. If you're expecting a completely serious survival thriller, you may be surprised by how often the movie leans into absurdity. The story can shift from serious drama to dark humor pretty quickly, and that won't work for every viewer. The premise itself may also require some patience. You have to accept the movie's world before you can fully enjoy it. If you're constantly asking whether every detail makes realistic sense, the experience may become frustrating. This is a movie that asks you to go along with it, and if you do, you may have a much better time. Is it worth watching? So, should you watch The Last House? I'd say yes, especially if you enjoy unusual science fiction movies and survival stories. Don't go into this expecting a conventional action blockbuster. That's not really what this movie is trying to be. Instead, think of it as a strange survival experiment centered around a family. It's uncomfortable, it's funny in unexpected places, it's sometimes ridiculous. But it also has something meaningful underneath all of that chaos, and that combination is what makes it memorable. The Last House isn't perfect. It has tonal problems. Its premise is definitely strange, and some viewers may struggle with the movie's unusual approach, but at the same time, that's exactly why it stands out. It's a survival thriller with a very different personality. The movie takes the idea of family survival and puts it into an increasingly bizarre situation. And beneath all the science fiction and dark comedy, it delivers a simple message. When everything else disappears, the people around you may become the most important thing you have. Sometimes you don't realize how valuable ordinary life is until ordinary life is gone. Clean water, fresh food, a safe home, a little fresh air, and the people you love. Those things suddenly mean everything. For me, The Last House gets a 7 out of 10. It's strange, unpredictable, occasionally hilarious, and definitely not for everyone. But if you're tired of predictable survival movies and want something a little more unusual, this could be worth checking out. And who knows? With its bizarre premise and unconventional tone, The Last House might just become one of those movies that develops a passionate cult following over time. So what do you think about The Last House? Would you survive if your home became your only safe place? And if you had to choose between comfort and survival, how far would you actually go? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this review, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next movie review. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.